Late evening, Hong Kong, 1968. A narrow restaurant just off a main road, still open after most tables have cleared. Fluorescent lights hum above polished wood. Outside, traffic moves in short bursts, then stops. Inside, only a few voices remain, kept low. At one table, a single man eats without company. His jacket is folded beside him. The room measures less than 30 feet across. Two exits are visible. One is partially blocked by stacked chairs. The other opens directly to the street. Three staff members move quietly behind the counter. No one is in a hurry. The air changes when another group enters. Heavy footsteps. A pause near the doorway. One figure stands out by size alone. Nearly 280 pounds, shoulders filling the space between tables. He does not sit immediately. Words are exchanged, not shouted, but loud enough to be heard. A comment lands and is not taken back. Forks stop moving. A chair shifts. Someone near the window turns away. The room does not empty, but it thins. Time slows to measured seconds. No one intervenes. No one laughs. Nothing has happened yet. The restaurant was still open, but only just. It was 9:47 p.m. By the wall clock above the counter, its second-hand audible in the quieter stretches between passing cars outside. The room was rectangular, no more than 28 feet long and 12 feet wide, with 4 tables along the left wall and 3 along the right. The aisle between them narrowed to less than 4 feet at its tightest point. At the second table from the back sat Bruce Lee, alone. He had arrived earlier, shortly after 9:15, ordered simply, and begun eating without drawing attention. His jacket was folded on the chair beside him. His posture was upright, but relaxed. Both feet were flat on the floor. He did not face the door directly, but from where he sat, the entrance was visible in his peripheral vision. There were 6 other people in the room when he arrived. By 9:40, only 3 remained, a couple near the window and a man seated at the counter finishing a drink. 2 staff members worked behind the counter, one clearing plates, the other counting bills. A third moved in and out of the kitchen, the swinging door opening for no more than 2 seconds at a time. The exits were clear but imperfect. The main door opened inward and required a step back to use. A secondary exit at the rear led through the kitchen, partially blocked by stacked chairs waiting to be put away. Neither was locked. Both were visible. Nothing about the scene suggested confrontation. The sounds were ordinary. Cutlery touched porcelain. A chair leg scraped briefly, then stopped. Outside, a bus passed, its brakes releasing with a hiss. Inside, the air was warm, faintly oily, the smell of cooked meat lingering from earlier service. Lee ate steadily. He did not rush, but he did not linger either. Each movement was economical. He lifted his glass once every few minutes, took a measured sip, and set it down in the same place. No one approached him. No one spoke to him directly. To the staff, he was simply another late customer. At 9:52 p.m., the door opened again. The sound was heavier this time. The door struck its stop harder than before. 3 men entered together. The first stepped inside and paused. He was taller than the others and considerably broader. His shoulders nearly brushed the door frame. His weight caused the wooden floor to respond with a dull creak that carried across the room. The second and third followed half a step behind. They did not spread out. They stayed close, forming a loose line that briefly blocked the entrance. For approximately 4 seconds, no one moved. The largest man looked around before choosing a direction. His gaze passed over the counter, the remaining tables, and finally settled toward the back half of the room. He did not lower his voice when he spoke to his companions. His tone was casual, but it carried. The couple by the window stopped talking. The man at the counter turned his head slightly, then returned his attention to his glass. Behind the counter, one staff member paused with a plate in his hands, then continued walking more slowly. The group did not sit immediately. They took 2 steps forward, then stopped again, as if reassessing the space. The aisle between tables suddenly felt narrower. Chairs that had seemed well placed minutes earlier now appeared too close together. Lee did not look up at first. He continued eating, his right hand steady, his left resting lightly on the table. From where he sat, the distance to the group was approximately 15 feet. No one had addressed him. No one had spoken his name. The largest man laughed once. It was brief and unforced, but it broke the remaining rhythm of the room. One of his companions shifted his weight and leaned against the back of an empty chair, pushing it several inches out of alignment with the table. At 9:54 p.m., a remark was made. It was not shouted. It did not include a threat. It was framed as an observation, delivered with enough volume to ensure it traveled the length of the room. The words concerned posture, stance, the way someone held himself while seated. Fort paused again. This time, they did not resume immediately. No one intervened. No one asked the group to lower their voices. The staff did not speak. The room, small as it was, felt momentarily suspended, as if waiting to see whether the comment would pass unanswered. Lee set his fork down. The fork came to rest on the edge of the plate, not abruptly, but with a precision that suggested intention rather than reaction. Lee's hand withdrew and settled on the table, palm down. For approximately 3 seconds he did not move. The remark had been delivered from near the center of the room, roughly 14 to 15 feet away. It was directed outward rather than at any one person by name. But its aim was unmistakable. The largest man remained standing. His companions stayed close, one on either side, forming a loose triangle that occupied the narrow aisle between tables. The words themselves were framed as humor. They described how a man sat, how he held his back, how his feet were placed. There was no raised voice, no explicit insult. But the tone carried assumption. The assumption was that size established authority, and authority permitted comment. Lee lifted his head and looked directly toward the speaker. The room responded immediately, though quietly. The couple near the window shifted in their seats, their chairs moving back several inches from the table. The man at the counter finished his drink and placed the glass down, but did not stand. Behind the counter, one staff member stepped closer to the register, as if to create distance without leaving his position. The largest man noticed the attention and adjusted his stance. He placed his feet wider apart, approximately shoulder width, occupying more of the aisle. His hands rested loosely at his sides. He did not step forward, but he did not step back either. A brief pause followed. It lasted no more than 5 seconds, but it carried weight. In that time, no one spoke. The ambient sounds returned in fragments: a passing car outside, the hum of the lights, the faint clink of a dish being set down in the kitchen. Lee spoke once. His voice was low and measured. It did not carry as far as the earlier remark, but it did not need to. The content was limited. He addressed the comment itself, not the man who made it. He neither apologized nor challenged. He stated that the observation was incorrect. The response did not escalate the volume of the room. If anything, it lowered it. The largest man smiled, but the expression did not reach his eyes. He took a single step forward, reducing the distance between himself and Lee to roughly 12 feet. One of his companions laughed softly. The other glanced toward the door, then back again, as if checking the environment rather than the exchange. The laughter was brief, but it signaled alignment. The larger man replied. His words came faster now. He repeated the point, adding detail. He referenced weight, strength, and experience. The tone remained conversational, but the pace quickened. He shifted his shoulders once, causing the chair beside him to bump the table and scrape across the floor. That sound drew attention again. The staff member near the counter stopped moving altogether. The couple by the window leaned slightly away from the aisle. The man at the counter rotated his stool a few degrees, turning his body sideways to the room. Lee remained seated. His back stayed straight. His feet did not move. He did not raise his voice. He answered once more, this time more briefly than before. He did not comment on size or strength. He stated that the matter was not worth discussing further. This marked a change. The largest man's smile faded. He took another step forward. The distance closed to approximately 9 feet. In the confines of the room, this was significant. It brought him within the span where normal conversation would no longer require raised voices. He tilted his head and spoke again. The comment was sharper now. It was no longer framed as humor. It implied disrespect, not only in posture, but in presence. It suggested that remaining seated was itself an act of avoidance. A micro shift occurred. Lee pushed his chair back slightly, no more than 6 inches. The movement was controlled and slow. It created space between the table and his body, enough to allow him to stand if needed. But he did not stand yet. The chair legs made minimal sound against the floor. This action drew a visible reaction from the group. One companion straightened from his lean against the chair. The other adjusted his position to the side, opening the aisle by a small margin. The largest man stopped advancing. For the first time, the room's exits became relevant. The main door remained partially blocked by the group's entry. The kitchen exit was still visible at the rear, but the stacked chairs limited clear passage. No one moved toward either. Time compressed. From the initial remark to this point, less than 90 seconds had passed. Lee spoke again. This time he addressed the man directly. The sentence was short. He stated that if there was a problem, it could be resolved outside, or it could end there. He did not stand. He did not gesture. The room went quiet. The suggestion hung in the air without response. No one accepted it. No one rejected it outright. For several seconds, the only movement came from the kitchen door opening and closing, once, briefly, then staying shut. The largest man did not answer immediately. He shifted his weight from his left foot to his right, then back again. The movement caused the aisle to constrict further. His companions adjusted with him, not deliberately, but instinctively, closing ranks by inches rather than feet. The distance between him and Lee remained just under 9 feet. The staff member near the register glanced toward the door, then down at the counter. He did not speak. The other remained behind the counter, hands resting flat, shoulders slightly raised. No one signaled for help. No one attempted to leave. The man at the counter slid off his stool. He did not move toward the exit. Instead, he stepped 2 feet to the side, placing a table between himself and the aisle. It was a defensive repositioning, subtle but deliberate. The couple by the window followed a similar pattern, angling their chairs away from the center of the room, creating a narrow pocket of open space behind them. The room was now divided. Lee stood. He did not push the chair back further. He rose straight up, clearing the table edge by inches. The chair remained where it was, angled slightly outward. His posture did not change, once upright. His feet settled shoulder-width apart, heels aligned with the chair legs behind him. The distance between him and the largest man reduced to approximately 7 feet. This was the first irreversible shift. The largest man exhaled audibly through his nose. He took one more step forward. The aisle could no longer accommodate both bodies comfortably. The tables on either side limited lateral movement. Chairs pressed against knees and calves. The space now allowed only forward or backward motion. One companion placed a hand on the back of a chair, steadying it. The other moved half a step to the side, opening a narrow corridor toward the door, no wider than 2 feet. It was unclear whether this was intentional or reflexive. The largest man spoke again. His voice dropped slightly, but the words sharpened. He questioned the invitation. He framed standing as a challenge rather than a response. He leaned forward just enough to make the point. Lee did not reply. He adjusted his position by a fraction. His right foot shifted back approximately 6 inches. His weight redistributed evenly. His hands remained at his sides. The movement was small, but it altered the geometry of the space, creating a diagonal line between him and the man in front of him rather than a straight one. This adjustment did not go unnoticed. The largest man stopped leaning forward. His shoulders squared. He glanced briefly at Lee's feet, then back to his face. The look was quick, less than a second, but it marked a recalculation. The room felt smaller. At 9:56 p.m., Someone outside the restaurant tried the door, realized it was occupied, and moved on. The handle rattled once, then released. The sound underscored how little separation there was between inside and outside, and how exposed the moment had become. The largest man lifted one hand, palm up, in a gesture that suggested explanation rather than threat. He spoke again, this time slower. He referenced experience. He referenced weight. He implied that proximity favored him. Lee answered with a single sentence. He stated that distance was sufficient. Another micro-resolution followed. One of the companions laughed again, but this time the sound was thinner. It stopped almost immediately. He stepped back half a pace, placing his heel against the leg of a table. This opened the aisle by several inches and broke the tight formation that had been holding since their entry. The largest man noticed and turned his head slightly, just enough to register the change. In that moment, his body orientation shifted away from Lee by a few degrees. It was brief, but it mattered. The line of pressure bent. Lee did not advance. He did not retreat. He remained where he was, 7 feet away, shoulders relaxed, gaze steady. He did not speak again. The silence stretched. Behind the counter, the staff member closest to the register cleared his throat, then stopped. He did not follow it with words. The sound served only to remind everyone that others were present, watching, counting seconds. The largest man took a breath and stepped forward. The distance closed to less than 5 feet. At this range, the tables no longer mattered. The chairs were obstacles. The exits, though still visible, were no longer immediately usable. The room had reached its limit. No one else moved. At less than 5 feet, the exchange could no longer remain verbal by default. The largest man's presence filled the narrowed aisle. His shoulders were slightly forward now, his chest closer to the line of tables than before. The space between him and Lee measured no more than 4 feet, close enough that breath could be felt. He stopped there. For a moment, neither man moved. The silence was not empty. It was loaded with calculation. The restaurant clock ticked once, then again. The second hand passed the 12. The largest man spoke first. His voice was low. The sentence was short. It questioned whether the invitation to resolve the matter outside still stood. The phrasing implied expectation rather than inquiry. Lee answered immediately. He said yes. Nothing else followed the word. No explanation. No instruction. It was a decision, not a provocation. This created the next shift. The largest man hesitated. It was subtle, but visible. His eyes flicked toward the door, then back. The exit was still partially blocked by his companions, but it was closer to him than to Lee. The distance from his position to the door was approximately 6 feet. The distance from Lee to the same door was closer to 12. The advantage of proximity was not lost on him. One of the companions stepped aside, clearing the path further. The opening widened to nearly 3 feet. It was enough to pass through without turning sideways. The other companion stayed where he was, close to the tables, his hands now clasped loosely in front of him. The largest man shifted his stance, angling his body toward the door, while keeping his head oriented toward Lee. This was the first time his attention divided. Lee noticed. He did not follow the movement. He did not reposition to block the exit. He remained where he was, feet planted, shoulders square. He neither closed distance nor created it. The choice to move or not move remained with the other man. Another pause followed, lasting approximately 6 seconds. The largest man exhaled. He took a half step backward, then stopped. The movement was small, but it increased the distance between them to nearly 6 feet. In the context of the room, it was significant. This should have ended the encounter. It did not. He spoke again, louder this time, as if to reclaim attention that had begun to slip. The comment was dismissive. It reframed the invitation as retreat rather than resolution. The tone suggested that remaining inside was now a test of resolve. Lee did not respond verbally. Instead, he took one step forward. The step was measured. No more than 12 inches. It brought the distance back to less than 5 feet. His movement was straight, unhurried and precise. He did not raise his hands. He did not lower his head. He simply occupied the space that had just been vacated. This was the irreversible moment. By stepping forward, Lee removed the ambiguity. The choice was no longer between inside and outside. It was between action and withdrawal. The largest man's proximity advantage vanished. The aisle could not accommodate further advance without contact. The largest man reacted immediately. He shifted his weight backward, then forward again, as if deciding which direction to commit to. His hands lifted slightly from his sides, not into a guard, but out of neutrality. His shoulders tightened. His breathing changed. The companions stopped moving altogether. The staff behind the counter froze in place. The couple by the window leaned back, their chairs now fully angled away from the aisle. Time compressed again. From Lee's step forward to the next movement, less than 2 seconds passed. The largest man made his decision. He leaned in. The lean forward covered less than 12 inches, but it crossed the final boundary. At that distance, balance mattered more than strength. Lee moved once. The movement began at the feet and ended at the shoulder, completed in under 1 second. His right foot shifted inward by a few inches, changing the angle of contact. His torso rotated slightly. There was no wind-up, no visible strike in advance. Contact occurred at close range. The largest man's forward pressure met a sudden loss of alignment. His upper body tipped past his center of gravity while his weight remained committed to the step. For a fraction of a second, both feet were flat. But his balance was already gone. Lee's shoulder and forearm redirected the forward mass rather than stopping it. The action was compact and precise, lasting no more than a single breath. The force was not explosive. It was directional. The result was immediate. The 280-pound man staggered backward 3 steps. His heel caught the leg of a chair. The chair tipped. His momentum continued. He fell sideways, striking the edge of a table before hitting the floor. The impact ended the motion. From first contact to the fall, approximately 2 seconds passed. No one followed him down. Lee did not advance. He remained standing where he was, feet planted, hands at his sides. The room was silent. The sound of the fall faded quickly. A chair lay on its side. A table had shifted several inches from its original position. Nothing else moved. The man on the floor did not speak at first. He remained where he had fallen. One knee bent. One arm braced against the floor. His companions did not rush to him. They stood still, their attention divided between him and the man still standing in the aisle. Lee did not change posture. His hands remained open at his sides. His breathing was steady. He did not look down at the man on the floor for more than a moment. When he did, it was brief and neutral. Approximately 5 seconds passed before the man on the floor pushed himself upright. He did not stand immediately. He sat back against the overturned chair, testing his balance before shifting his weight. There was no attempt to re-engage. No words were exchanged. One companion stepped forward, careful to keep distance. He righted the chair and helped the fallen man to his feet. The process took several seconds. It was quiet and controlled. The other companion watched the door. Behind the counter, a staff member cleared his throat again. This time, he spoke. His voice was calm. He asked if there was a problem. No one answered him directly. The largest man stood, adjusted his jacket, and avoided the aisle. He did not look toward Lee again. The group moved toward the door without urgency, but without delay. The path was clear now. The door opened and closed once more, softer than before. Inside, the restaurant returned to its earlier state. Chairs were set upright. A table was pulled back into alignment. No one discussed what had happened. No one offered an explanation. Lee retrieved his jacket, paid at the counter, and left alone. No report was filed. No witness statements were taken. By the following day, accounts of the incident differed in detail and emphasis. What remained consistent was its brevity and the fact that it ended as quickly as it began. There was no official version of what happened that night. The restaurant did not record incidents. No police were called. No medical attention was requested. By the time the last table was cleared, the physical traces were limited to a chair placed back under a table and a floor that had already been wiped clean. Those who remained spoke little. When they did, the accounts varied. Some recalled the size of the man who fell. Others focused on how little movement preceded it. A few insisted it happened too fast to describe accurately. Time estimates ranged from 1 second to several. Distances were remembered differently. What aligned was the sequence, words, proximity, silence, then sudden imbalance. The companions of the fallen man did not revisit the place. The staff did not mention the incident to new customers. By the next evening, the room looked no different than it had before 9:47 p.m., the night prior. Outside that space, the story traveled in fragments. It moved through gyms, not newspapers, through private conversations, not public statements. It was retold without embellishment at first, then with slight variations as distance grew. Some versions emphasized restraint, others emphasized surprise. None included a prolonged struggle. None described retaliation. In every telling, one detail remained unchanged. Bruce Lee had not initiated anything. He had not raised his voice. He had not pursued the outcome. The incident ended the moment balance was lost. For those who heard the story later, that detail mattered more than the fall itself. It suggested control rather than aggression, resolution rather than dominance. It left room for doubt, and doubt allowed the account to endure without being challenged directly. Without photographs or reports, the event resisted fixation. It became something remembered but not pinned down, a moment defined by absence as much as action. In that way, it lasted longer than louder stories ever did.